Hello everyone and welcome to this video on conversions. Uh, the topic of conversions or how to do conversions is something very essential, and anyone who has the subject of science or plans to study them properly in the future must be very well aware of how to do some basic type of conversions. So when we talk about conversion, there would be four type of conversions, four type of different conversions that would be involved. The first type of conversion would just be conversions of simple prefixes. So, for example, you could be asked to convert meter to millimeters, or you could be asked to convert meter to kilometers, or you could be asked to convert meters to micrometers. So, it could be any unit, but the conversion would just be from one prefix to another. Or similarly, you could alternatively be asked to convert between the two. So, for example, you might have kilometers sorry yeah, you might have kilometers and you might be asked to convert them into millimeters, or you could have millimeters and you might be asked them to convert them into micrometers. So this is the first type of basic conversion, where just the prefix change and everything, or the unit and the quantity, everything remains the same. The second type of conversion we have with us is our conversions where we're not just changing the prefix, rather we're changing the units. For example, the conversion might be from centimeters to inches, or from kilometers to miles, or similarly from seconds to hours or hours to seconds, and so on and so forth. The third type of conversion that you might encounter would be conversions that include either of the two or both of the two twice, meaning that it could either be, for example, you might be expected to convert kilometers per hour to miles per hour. In this case, you might, or not kilometers per hour to miles per hour, to let's say miles per, let's just say miles per minute. Obviously you won't be asked to do this much, but since you're just understanding what type of conversion we can do, so this type of conversion could be this. In this case, you're expected to change the units from hours to minutes, but you're just expected to change the prefix, or sorry, the unit from kilometers to miles as well. And another case could be to just simply convert kilometers per hour to meters per second. So you could see the difference between the two. In the first one, kilometers were converted into miles, and we were changing the whole unit through which we were measuring distance. And hour are a different unit, and minutes are a different unit. Obviously they are related, but they are different. And so we were changing the units in the first one. In the second case of the third type of conversion we can encounter is we just converting kilometers to meter per second. We just changing this prefix, and for hours to seconds we just changing the we're changing the units. And kilometers to meters we just changing the prefix. From hours to seconds we just changing the units. And the fourth type of conversion, and this type of conversion sometimes confuses students a lot, rather I'd say this confuses people the most. So what this type of conversion is if I were to convert, let's say, meter cube to centimeter cube, or millimeter cube to centimeter cube, or let's say inch square, which could be written as inch square to centimeter square. But this time it's not just centimeter to inches like above. These two cases are not the same. One is centimeter to inches, the other one is centimeter square and inches. So both cases are different, and this is a difference that all students should keep in mind. The conversion for both of these is not the same. So moving on with this, let's do some questions that would help us understand this thing better. So one example of the conversion we could do is, if the question says convert 0.043 meters to millimeters. So we just need to do this conversion. Now there are different ways we could do this conversion. One is if we know what the conversion is. If we obviously know that 1 meter equals 1000 millimeters, So 1000 millimeters. So we could just divide the number by 1000 and get our answer in millimeters. Another way to do this is to convert this into the scientific notation, and I would prefer this way because this way enables students to, like, this is somewhere that would always work. Sometimes the other method could be difficult, but the scientific notation method is always true. So how do we do this is we have the number with us 0.0043. We need to change the number such that it now has a power of -3. How do we do that? We take this decimal place, we move it to the right once. When I move it to the right once, I have to add times 10 to the power, and the power of any number is initially 1. If I move the decimal point towards the right, the power of 10 is supposed to decrease by 1. Then when I move this by the other digit, other time, the point is now here, the power changes from -1 to -2. And then if I change that again, so I'm left with my power changes to -3. So this is what we do, and a number converts into 4.3 times 10 to the power -3 meters. Now we know that milli is a prefix which has a symbol m, and m represents a value of times 10 to the power -3. So what we do is we just substitute this times 10 to the power -3 with the the symbol milli. That's what I do. I just replace this with times 10 to the power -3, and I'm left with 4.3 millimeters. So you could see times 10 to the power -3 has now been replaced with 4.3 millimeters. Another way which I was talking about was, if we know the conversions, we know 1 millimeter equals 1000, 1 meter equals 1000 meters. So what we can do is we could do we could find what 1 millimeter might be equal to. So 1 millimeter might be equal to similarly 1 over 1000 meters. And this 1 over 1000 meters could turn out to be 0.001 meters. Yeah, 0.001 meters. Now if I have this number and I want to see this is like 1 millimeter, or 1 millimeter is equal to this much, then how many millimeters? What then? Sorry, 1 millimeter. Yeah, if 1 millimeter is equal to 0.01 meters, how much would x millimeters be equal to? Like, I know what the distance is, it's 0.043, 0.0043, and x millimeters would be equal to 0.0043 meters. We do the cross multiplication, and the cross multiplication, you would see that you're just simply multiplying x with 0.001 equals 1 times 0.0043, or if I were to find x would just simply turn out to be 4.3. And obviously I know the units, that this is millimeters. This was another way. Obviously we won't be doing all questions this way, but just so that people know that that's also another way how we could do this. So moving on to another question. The question is to convert 0.00034 seconds to milliseconds. So that's what we do again. What is milliseconds? This milli means a times 10 to the power of -3. So we need to convert this number into such a way that it now has a power of -3. That's just changing the scientific notation. So if again I write this number 0.0034 seconds. Now if I want to include the power of 10 to the power -3, I'll need to move the decimal place once towards the right, and this would put a power of 10 to the power -1. If I move it again towards, if I move the decimal point again towards the right, the power would increase and become 10 to the power -2. And then if I do that again, the power now becomes times 10 to the power negative 3. And the decimal point comes to this place. This number becomes 0.34 times 10 to the power negative 3 seconds. This is the same as this number. I've just moved the decimal point and decreased or subtracted the power of 10. So if you could try this, this would give you the same result. Now what we do is we change this with the term milli. We change this with milli, which represents a power of times 10 to the power negative 3. So we get 0.34 milliseconds. That's how this question is done. This the alternative way as well, which you could try, but I personally prefer this way. Another question would be 0.00045 seconds to microseconds. So microseconds, micro, what's is the power of micro? It's times 10 to the power negative 6. So we need to convert the number into standard form or scientific notation such that it now has a power of times 10 to the power of negative 6. For that we'll have to move the decimal point 6 times towards the right, 0.00045. And now if I have the decimal point with me, so I move the decimal point once, move it twice, I move it thrice, 4 times, 5 times, and 6 times. So each time I was moving the decimal point towards the right, my power was decreasing by 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and I'd be left with negative 6 because I've moved the decimal point towards the right 6 times. So I could just simply phrase this number again, and obviously this is where my point is. So the number could be phrased again as 45 times 10 to the power negative 6 seconds. And obviously this could be written as micro. So we just simply write 45 microseconds. So this is how we could do this question. Another question that can be done is a simpler one, 0.02 centimeters to millimeters. How we could do this? There are two ways. One way is if we know the conversion between centimeters and millimeters. So we know personally from these rulers we use that 10 millimeters are equal to 1 centimeters. So we could just simply do this. We could just simply multiply the 0.02 centimeters with 10 to get how much millimeter would this be. Or the other proper method would be to first convert 0.02 centimeters to meters. How would we convert this into meters? That's the question. So we would reverse the process we were doing above. Above we were making it turning it into its notation and then replacing the times 10 to the power of whatever 10 times 10 and whatever the power of 10 was with the symbol. This time we'd be replacing the symbol with the power. So centi, we all know, has a power of times 10 to the power of negative 2. So this becomes 0.02 times 10 to the power negative 2 meters. And negative 2 is obviously, we could use the calculator, or times 10 to the power negative 2 is simply 1 over 100, which means the number would move 2 more decimal places towards the right. So the number would move, not the decimal point. So I would get 0.0002 meters. This is what I'll get. So we're kind of reversing the process. Previously we were doing the exact opposite. We were going from the number to the scientific notation and from the scientific notation to the symbol. This is the exact reverse process. So I hope this does not cause confusion among students. Now we need to convert this meter to millimeters. So how can we convert this? We just convert it into times 10 to the power of negative 3 and then we replace it. The exact opposite of what we did. So 0.0002 meters. How could we change the decimal place? 1, 2, 3. If I move it 3 times towards the right, I'd be able to have a power of 10 times 10 to the power negative 3, and the decimal would be here. So I'll get 0.2 times 10 to the power negative 3 meters. And similarly, I could replace times 10 to the power negative 3 with milli. So 0.2 millimeter. So this is what I'll get. This would be my answer. Or another shorter way was that when I had this with me, this number with me, 0.02 times 10 to the power negative 2, I could have just moved the decimal point again one decimal place and could have increased this power by 1, and I would have gotten directly the number which I was supposed to get, 0.2 times 10 to the power negative 3. But that's obviously something that comes after a lot of practice. So 0.2 times 10 to the power negative 3 meters, and then we convert this thing with milli, and we get the same answer as to what we've gotten below. Another thing could be, another example would be convert 530 grams to kilograms. So how can we convert this? The simplest way is, we all know that 1 kg equals 1000 grams, and that obviously so we just simply divide 530 by 1000 to get the answer. 1 kg is equal to this, x kg would be equal to 530 grams. So we just cross multiply them, and obviously this is the second method I had told you guys about. So just do the cross multiplication, and we end up dividing 530 by 1000 equals x, which would be equal to 0.53 kgs. Or the other method would be to convert this number into times 10 to the power of positive 3. How do we do that? We have 530 grams. Yeah. So if I want to convert this number into something which has times 10 to the power of positive 3, so I'll need to move the decimal point, which is currently here, towards the left. I would need to convert this towards the left. Previously, I was moving the decimal point towards the right, and my power was decreasing by -1 each time I did that. This time I'm moving it towards the left, and every time I would move it towards the left, my power would increase by +1. So one time I do that, my power becomes from times 10 to the power, it becomes times 10 to the power 1. The second time I do that, my power becomes times 10 to the power 2. And the third time I do that, my decimal comes here, and the power becomes times 10 to the power of positive 3. So this is what we get. And now we could write the number again, 0.53 times 10 to the power 3 grams. Now we're ready to convert this times 10 to the power 3 with its given prefix, which is kilo. Kilo represents times 10 to the power of 3. So we just simply replace that, and we're left with 0.53 kilograms. So, or if I use the color to show the change, so kilograms, the kilo came from here. So this is how we could convert this. And one last conversion on this would be, if I had to convert, let's say, 330 microseconds to seconds. If I had to do this conversion, how would I do that? I would simply replace this with the symbol, and obviously we've done this step many times. So 330 times 10 to the power -6. This -6 was the symbol of micro. So micro was replaced with this, times 10 to the power -6 seconds. Now we just do the thing. You could either use a calculator or do it manually to express the number. So 330 times 10 to the power -6. You saw, you all realized that when I moved the decimal place to the right previously, I was decreasing the power by -1, right? So now this time I have to decrease this power. I have to express the number the way it is. So how would I do that? Times 10 to the power -6 times 10 to the power -6 could alternatively be written as 1 over 10 to the power 6. And 1 over 10 to the power 6 means 1 over 10 with 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is what this would mean. power of number 10 to the power of 6. So you could just simply divide your number 330 by 1,000,000. This is what we'd get, and if you divide this in the calculator, you'll have to move like 6 decimal places. So you'll be left with the number which is 0.00033 seconds. This is what we'd be left with. This number obviously converts into this. So this is how we're going to do some simple conversions. Now there are three other methods which we talked about. So we'll inshallah discuss them in the next